Would you say filmmaking has always been easy for you?
I think writing comes easier, but then filmmaking, because there is also all the practical aspects, you know, like funding, getting a crew together, getting a producer. I mean, that's always, each film presents its own challenges. So I don't want to say that, oh, it's always easy to make a film. It's always easy to make a film, because you have to, you know, get that boulder up over the hill, and each time there's always a lot of effort, and it's a team effort. But I think just coming up with an idea for a film, I find relatively easy, yeah, in that sense.
You think that goes back to, like you were saying earlier, you love to be sort of the receiver of the story and not the one pushing the story out, and maybe you just got so good at, I don't know, just absorbing stories?
Yeah, maybe. So now I absorbed all those stories, and now I can kind of put them out.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
Yeah, I can agree with that too, because it is nice to just hear somebody tell you about their day. And believe me, there's a number of people that's all they want to do. And sometimes it's nice to just have that around. Mm-hmm. But I was just wondering if then it became just so instinctual for you to push out your own stories just because you consume so many.
And also, you know, capturing, you know, the nuances of, you know, language, that kind of stuff really fascinates me. And I think you can only really do that if you listen very intently.
And growing up in Portugal, is going to the Cinemaplex part of just the normal teenage lifestyle?
For sure. And also in Portugal, we don't really dub films. Animation usually, you know, is dubbed because, especially, you know, for young kids, they obviously have to hear it in Portuguese. But you always have the option for any animated film to see it in the original version in Portugal. So we don't have the kind of the dubbing practices that, for example, exist in France or in Spain, where it's, you know, you're a bit more hard pressed to find the film in its original version with Portuguese subtitles. Yeah.
Do you remember the first film or one of the first films you saw as a teenager with friends, maybe at the Cinemaplex, that was an American film, and how that affected you? I
think I saw Kids, and Kids definitely is such an amazing film, and it's a film that I think, I mean, it's lightning in a bottle, and I think you can only appreciate how much it really was lightning in a bottle now when you look at, like, you know, the first time, you know, Rosario Dawson was on camera, the first time that Chloe Sevigny was on camera, and then just the amazing turns from the non-actors. I think it was the first time that you know, the kid who played Telly had acted before, and just watching that film and seeing, you know, what could be done if you really embraced that indie spirit. You don't need a lot of money to make a good film. You really don't. You just have to be very, very smart and very receptive to what, you know, the people that you want to work with can give you.
And when you were watching those movies, was that what inspired you to want to go to school in London and then UCLA, or what was that?
Well, I mean, I for a long time I thought I would be a video artist. So I was kind of looking more at, like, you know, Pippi Rist, who's, you know, very, very famous Swiss video artist, looking at other female video, more like experimental filmmakers. That was kind of the path that I thought I was going to take. But then once I left art school and I started working as a camera assistant, I think that's when I really was intrigued about maybe one day directing something that was more narrative, perhaps, you know, more commercial, but still indie, because I saw that it was very rare to work with, you know, a female director or a female DP or a female screenwriter, and I wanted to be part of the change that I wanted to see.
Like sort of like Cindy Sherman?
Cindy Sherman as well, of course, big reference.
Right, and how she was most often, right, the focus of what she did, so she didn't even need a crew. But yeah, and just that interesting sort of the selfies before selfie culture.
Exactly, and kind of deconstructing, you know, what it is to be a woman because I mean, only a woman can answer that question. But it was the how many times have women been muses, right? We're the thing that is looked at. And we don't really maybe get the opportunity to look at ourselves, especially in like in a creative, artistic way. And so it was absolutely very important. Like Cindy Sherman, the Guerrilla Girls, as well. What they did was, I mean, it's revolutionary. It's inspiring. It makes you think, I want to be like that when I grow up. Yeah.
And so, how did you do it? Did you apply for just the one school in London, or did you apply to others? And what was the process?
I applied for a few. I applied to the rival. Well, back then it was the rival. I don't know if it still is, which was Goldsmiths. So that was like all the way on the other side of London. But in the end, I didn't get into Goldsmiths, but I got into the Slade, and I also got into like Central St. Martin's and Wimbledon as well, and London College of Communication. But in the end, I thought the Slade was the best fit for me.
And so you got your bachelor's and then decided you would go to UCLA after that, or how did that work?
So, I mean, I'm quite long in the tooth. So I did my undergraduate degree, worked as a camera assistant, got some funding in Portugal, made my first short film there, and I filmed that in 2012. And then I did a few more short films in Portugal. I was there for a while. I realized that if I really wanted to have a career as an indie filmmaker, that I was, better off leaving, because Portugal still has like a very small film industry. And then that's when I applied for UCLA, and then I started the master's there in 2015. Yeah.
What was your first assignment for this UCLA screenwriting program?
So I was in the name of the program is production/directing, MFA. And they encourage they want their directors to write, even though there is then a screenwriting department, which is, very prestigious at UCLA. But we as directors, we had to write, and I think it must have been one of the first assignments that we had. We had to write a script for just a 2-minute film, just like a little tiny. It's a bit of a glorified film exercise, but that was maybe one of the first things we had to do, like year one.
Oh, wow. A 2-minute film.
Just a 2-minute, yeah.
And it has a 3-act structure, a 2-minute film?
Not really. But what I think they try and teach you is that I think you only have 4 hours to shoot it, and they only give you one card. So I think that the purpose of the exercise is to teach you economy. Okay. Which, is absolutely very important on a film set as a director, being able to make, fast decisions.
And so what was your 2-minute project about?
So that is on my website for free.
Oh, great. Okay.
It's there.
What's the domain? Oh, sorry. What's the domain?
It's called 88. And at that point, I had already been in contact with Juan Reynoso, who's one of my friends, and he's a teacher at Compton High School, and he's also a professional actor. And I had asked him, are any of your kids interested in acting? And he said yes. And so he introduced me to DeJohn Wethington, who was one of his students at the time. And he is the star of 88. And he goes in for a casting audition and is kind of dismissed by the casting directors, but then kind of proves his worth to them in the space of 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, because maybe this is jumping ahead, but I found it interesting that you said that a lot of the students that grow up in Compton, that they don't say that they're from Compton when they go to job interviews.
They say South Central.
Very interesting, because they feel that it's a bias against them.
And also, and that's something that, for example, in Lisbon exists as well, the kind of, in neighborhoods that have a bit of a stigma.
Yes, I know about that. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. People associate that particular suburb in Lisbon with, crime and poverty and all these very negative things. And so those kids also, when they go into job interviews, they don't say they're from Buraque. They say they're from Amadora, which is kind of like the equivalent of not saying you're from Compton, saying you're from South Central. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, mm-hmm. Even here in LA, I know applying for a job years ago, and they said to me, "Why do you live there?" And I was so shocked, and I've had other people do it. It's an interesting thing, and I just swore that I was not going to cave into that, but I almost wonder if it would have been easier. So That's very fascinating. When I read that, it really like triggered a lot in me that, you know, you had said that, because where I was referring to was not considered, it was not as stigmatized as the other areas. But and did you focus on that in the film? Did you talk about that when you finally did your feature? Did you explore this?
So the feature kind of talks a bit more about the stigma of you know, being DACA eligible or TPS eligible and having that status potentially revoked and then becoming undocumented, which, you know, is a status in and of itself. So it kind of talks more about that than about, you know, just generally Compton per se.
Right, okay. And when were you planning, when did you already started writing this film? Was this before 2016 or?
No, I started writing the script for La Leyenda Negra, I think at the end of 2017.
Okay.
So like maybe October, November, I think. I had like the first act. Yeah.
Right. I know I'm jumping ahead here, sorry, but I was just curious about the timing. So that was how you sort of got your foot in the door with Compton High School, was in doing the 2-minute, to go back to that. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping around, but
yeah.
Okay, so interesting. So you kind of already knew the world a little bit, maybe they trusted you and you were able to go in and meet some of the students.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it started. But then I did another short film, again in Compton with Mr. Reynoso, where he played a cop. And so I'd done a few films with Compton, non-actors, and then that eventually led to the feature.